Kur. The story of Sasha. Kur is a city in the east of Germany. A spotless place with a beautiful view on the Alps. It's the birthplace of H.R. Giger, the man who designed the sets for the Alien films. In the middle of the center, you'll find a shimmering statue of the alien in Alien. At 8 in the morning, on the day after I assisted Sasha, the self-crowned king of Japanese knotweed in the canton of Graubünden, in eradicating a knotweed bush on the outskirts of the city, I find myself in the Giger bar, having tea, while some loud Russians are getting heavy on beers. The whole bar seems plastic and fake. I mean, the whole place is plastic and fake, just like Kur itself, but in a slightly less convincing way. I met Sasha a week ago in Zurich on a conference about the eradication of Japanese knotweed. He was one of the speakers. During lunch, I invited myself to visit him in Kur and to assist him in his work. He says he's used to working with volunteers. Every year he manages a group of young people that refuse to go to the army. The civil service guys, he calls them. Some men serve their country far away, says Sasha. But these civil service guys, they fight the enemy on Swiss soil, which is much more useful. Before we get to work, Sasha tells me he's not a racist. It feels like he wants to make sure I understand that before we start the job. The invasives really harm our ecosystem, you know. That's the only reason why we eradicate them. And the fact that they harm is because they are exotic and not adapted. If a native would do this, we would also eradicate it. Only there are no native species who get really invasive. Native species, you know, they have native enemies. We talk about the different abbreviations for invasive species. Sasha tells me that a couple of years ago, science stopped referring to these species as IS, for obvious reasons. He smiles. They changed to AIS in the US and in Europe, and to INNS in the UK. IAS means invasive alien species, and INNS invasive non-native species. And with this change, another set of values got imposed, I tell him. INS, invasive native species, does not seem to exist anymore. Sasha does not reply. He's in full determination of pulling out a super tough route. It's the first time that I experience the eradication of knotweed. It's a very heavy job, in fact. The roots of the knotweed are so firm and they strike so deep into the soil that it is super hard to get it out. In fact, Sasha says, while pulling out a knotweed crown, the roots are not so deep here as in Japan. The plant is mostly growing there through lava. It's the first plant to colonize the soil after volcano eruption. There is no lava here, so the Japanese knotweed adapted itself to its new environment by having a less deep rooting system. That is what nature does, says Sasha, adapting itself to the circumstances. But it goes too slow for us humans, I respond, quasi asking. If nature adapted itself, as you said, would there after a while not be an insect that adapts its DNA so it can eat knotweed leaves? We are sitting down on a trunk of a tree. I'm tired. I'm sweating and I'm a bit fed up. It seems like we did not make any progress at all. I start to realize that this is not a job for me, Not only because I don't really agree with eradication, but also because it's just a lost battle. My thoughts are drifting off, and I get back to reality hearing the word patience. Goddamn patience. Probably nature would adapt itself, says Sasha. But we have no patience for that. We cannot think further than a lifespan. Anyway, if you don't take the route, it's useless. I know a lot of people who think what I'm doing is crazy. Nobody believes in mechanical removal. They all want to spray. A lot of Sasha's colleagues are indeed very eager to spray. On the conference in Zurich, I saw a lot of cowboys getting totally macho with spraying nozzles and syringe that looks like guns, while talking about tote Lösung. Sounds totally creepy in German. Yeah, there are some guys, they think they are Crocodile Dundee, I agree, says Sasha. But that is nothing compared to what I saw in England. Do you know the Queen of Japanese knotweed, he asks. Never heard of, I say. Sasha tells me a story about a conference he attended in Brighton or Bristol, I forgot the exact place, but somewhere in the UK. It was totally crazy. I ended up with the Queen of Japanese knotweed and some other guy in a bar. It was super interesting. We were all drunk but still talking about invasives. On that conference, everybody was dressed up. In kimonos? I asked him, identifying with the enemy. No. In clothes from the time when the knotweed came to Europe. Victorian stuff. It was great. I would have loved to be there. I picture myself meeting the queen of the Japanese knotweed. Me in full admiration, she waving her knotweed tail elegantly behind her back. Anyway, I'm starting to get the impression that there's a lot of kings and queens, princes and princesses in the land of the Japanese knotweed, all with blood on their hands, all in full force trying to reconquer their territory. Later that day, I tried to convince Sasha to take me to the Queen of Japanese knotweed. We are still in contact about this matter, but I'm not sure if Sasha really trusts me. After the work, Sasha takes me to a tour through his town. He is pretty proud of the canton he takes care of. We pass the statue of the alien. It's quite something, I realize. To eradicate alien invasive species in the city that is the birthplace of the creator of the most iconic alien in history. For me at last. I've seen all the films. We tour around in his four-wheel drive and Sasha points me at some beautiful mountains. The landscapes seen from the city are indeed breathtaking. On my long way to Chur, I met a curator in Zurich. The Swiss built their identity in relation to this landscape, so if the slopes of the mountains get invaded by exotic species, this affects our identity in a very painful way, she tells me. At the end of the tour, Sasha shows me a place that is called Jamaica. We used to come here and drink beers and smoke some joints when we were young. If you live in Chur as a young guy, you need some way to get out of here. Chur can be pretty claustrophobic. He smiles. I would be delighted to let my brain be invaded by some Jamaican vibes right now, I think out loud. But instead, Sasha and me head to a bar. We are having some Japanese beers and dream about the future.